I don't know if you can tell, but I haven't exactly landed on a niche for this channel. But one thread that does seem to kind of weave through all of my different art outlets is I struggle with a problem. I research and research and research, fail a lot, and at some point I come to a resolution. And that's usually the point at which I want to share it. It's how I write the narrative of my life that gives me connection with people. So today I want to talk about postpartum depression because my experience over the last couple of months have been exactly that. Up until a few months ago, if you'd asked me what my experience had been, I would have told you there was one point, I think about 3 weeks after Ezra was born, that I woke up in the middle of the night overwhelmed with the urge to cry. There was no reason for it. It was just an influx of hormones. During the experience, I was like, wow, this is intense and interesting. I was very just curious about it. Let's be honest, crying feels kind of good. Other than typical hormone shifts, which I've been used to from pregnancy, I would have said that's the only thing that really happened. I certainly felt the challenges of being a new mom, very sleep deprived, still am. I was very shakily navigating identity issues, dyeing my hair back to the color it was when I was 26 and touring with my punk rock band. But I was actually pretty happy. I liked the changes. Things felt very calm, things felt very normal. I was experiencing beautiful moments with my baby and everything seemed pretty okay. COVID happened while we were in Puerto Rico and we decided to go to Tulum and quarantine there with a couple of friends. And that period of time was surreal and lovely because I was getting plenty of sleep. We were spending a lot of time by the pool and really just enjoying being in our space.
Are you trying to lure him with the corona?
When we got back to San Francisco, it was pack up all our stuff and I was quite distracted. There was always a big new problem to solve. It wasn't until we'd been in Berlin for maybe 2 or 3 months that I started to experience extremely debilitating anxiety. I'm a pretty anxious worrier type person, but this became panic attacks. I started noticing that I was getting very impatient and losing my temper a lot, where you're watching yourself kind of yell at your partner and you're like, well, I'm being a dick right now. I started crying a lot at everything. When I wasn't struggling with insomnia, I was having horrible nightmares. I started getting really bad headaches. When Ezra was napping, instead of using that time to get my stuff done, I would crawl into bed and watch Netflix. Repeatedly was saying out loud, what is wrong with me? I kept thinking I was going crazy. I remember thinking, I'm sure I've got some sort of cancer. And I think that was because none of these symptoms happened in the first 9 months after I had him. The worst part of it is I blamed myself pretty severely. I felt lazy and I was super ashamed of that. I felt like I was being ungrateful for having beautiful family and a great partner, the freedom to live the life we've chosen. I just felt like I wasn't appreciating any of it, and that made me feel extremely ashamed. I also was convinced that this was my fault for waiting too long to have kids. All of the physical symptoms I was feeling was because I had kids too old. It just felt like it was gonna get harder and harder the older I got, and that there was no light at the end of the tunnel. I thought it was my fault for not exercising enough, which is ridiculous because I work out a ton. So my solution was to just start throwing every healthy habit I could think of. New morning routine, started meditating more, lots of smoothies, learned about a lot of meal prep techniques. My supplement game went a little nuts. The problem was it wasn't in my body, it was in my mind. The sort of final straw was when I was having lunch with Manuel, I just started sobbing and couldn't stop. And it was mostly centered around anxiety because I just started having a panic attack while we were at this restaurant. And Manuel suggested, like I should have thought of way earlier, it's a great time to see a therapist. I don't know why it didn't occur to me that when I had a baby, moved across the world during a global pandemic, might want to think about getting some mental help. So I ended up seeking out my old life coach, who I'd worked with while I was pregnant on sort of career goals and had a really great connection with her. And we had this sort of, why are you here? What are you hoping to get out of this intro conversation? I described everything, and coincidentally, she had a baby about 2 or 3 months after I did. And she said, you know, it sounds a lot like you're experiencing some postpartum depression symptoms. To which I said, why would I be experiencing them suddenly now? So she informed me, as someone who is going through something similar, has done her homework, and is doing it through the lens of her profession. She informed me of a couple things that I didn't know that made a hell of a lot of sense once somebody just told them to me. One, postpartum depression can last for up to 2 years after your child is born. So at your 6-week checkup, when the doctors say, are you experiencing any problems? Nope. Okay, go on your way. You should really check in more often than that, especially if you're older. When you're 16, which is when your body is really physically in the best shape to have a baby. Then postpartum really only lasts about 6 weeks. When you're older, it takes your body a hell of a lot longer to recover. It's just like a hangover. Yes, I'm comparing having a child to having a hangover. When you're in your 20s, you could drink all night. By noon, you're like healed. Now, I don't know if you've had a hangover in your late 30s. It can take you 2 days. But it made total sense. The older you are, the longer it takes your body to recover from the physical trauma that is pregnancy. So yeah, that shit can take up to 2 years. And because I'm on the older side of things, I guess that I'm on the 1 to 2 year side of the spectrum. And it's not that it didn't kick in till later. I just had a lot of things distracting me. And finally, when the dust settled and sort of the novelty of being a new parent wore off, things got really tough. And my body started trying to tell me through all these physical symptoms that I needed to acknowledge some things. So at this point in the video, I will say that I don't have any solutions. I am still working through it and I haven't kind of come out the other side, so I don't have any advice, nor would I give it anyway. I would say 80% of the physical symptoms went away just by acknowledging what it was. Pain hurts more when you don't know the cause. Just acknowledging that I'm not going crazy, I don't have some fatal disease, hopefully, and I'm not just getting old. Just knowing it was a hormonal shift that was still in progress, where there would be an end to it, suddenly made me feel like I was so much more capable of dealing with it, and I have felt so much better every day since then. So I want to make a video like this and share my story, because why was it so hard for me to understand what was going on? I think there's a couple things. One, the name is confusing. I've never struggled with chronic depression, so I don't know what that feels like firsthand, but I wouldn't categorize what I was experiencing as anything under the umbrella of depression, stress, anxiety, overly emotional, and yeah, a little bummed out about my new lack of freedom, but I could always function. I never regretted my decision to have kids. Really, there were so many beautiful moments that it didn't feel like I was in the midst of a gripping depression. So I never thought that it could be postpartum depression. And one of the reasons I really want to make this video, even though it's hard to talk about, is there's a stigma around postpartum depression in particular. Mental illness has its own stigma, but postpartum depression, because you made the choice actively to have children, it feels like a self-induced mental illness, which carries with it so much shame. You feel ashamed to be feeling anything other than gratitude. That self-critical voice says, you have a beautiful, healthy baby, and you're sad about it. Poor you. It's hard to overcome that voice. There's an enormous amount of pressure to be nothing but grateful for a new baby. You're allowed to be a little stressed and a little tired, but bursting with meaning and purpose and love. And shame is a motherfucker. But like I said, the bright side of this was acknowledging that it's a temporary hormonal shift and that it's natural. This is actually an important part of the process of becoming a parent. There's reasons why these hormones are there. For example, part of the insomnia I'm kind of struggling with is from waking up at every tiny little sound. And the reason for that is your brain actually changes in the way that it sleeps because you want to be able to hear your baby if they start crying in the next room. But looking at that through the lens of giving purpose to your pain makes it less like suffering. So I wanted to make this video because if someone had shared a story like this with me, it could have saved me months and months of shame and real suffering. And the reason that I didn't is that no one really talks about this. That stigma that I talked about pressures women to suffer silently and alone. It feels wrong to feel wrong. The shame really makes it hard for women to want to talk about this, especially to post a video about it on the internet. It was so confusing and so lonely, and I have a partner who did nothing but listen to me attempt to explain what was going on for months and months, but I didn't have a group of women who were telling me what was going on. But when I started Googling, I found a ton of stuff out there, and it was so comforting. Of course, one of the first things I did when I realized this is what I'd been experiencing is I told every friend that I have, and found that a lot of my friends were also struggling with the same thing. So I just wanted to make a quick video to be another one of those voices that I wish I had had. All right, thank you guys so much for watching this. I genuinely appreciate having this platform as an outlet and a support system. If there's any other mamas out there who have struggled with this massive hormonal shift, just know that we're in this together. It's a perfectly natural thing that you will get through. All right, I'll see you guys in my next video.